What people do is they take nutrients and vitamins and vitamin C and vitamin D and they do IVs and they do all these other things. And what they're missing out is the root cause of why they're not getting down to the foundation of what's really happening. And if you look at other countries, so as you go out and study outside the United States, this is just common. Parasite cleansing is really common.
This is Doctor Talks.
Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation on reversing chronic gut conditions. I'm your host, Sinclair Canelli, and today I am joined by the wonderful Dr. Todd Watts, my dear friend and colleague. And I'm going to read you his official bio, but it really doesn't describe his level of impact in this space. So I'm going to fill in those blanks for you because I really wanted you to get the benefit of his wisdom and what he has shared with functional medicine and helped people to progress into really a whole new level of integrating bioregulatory medicine and really meeting the desperate, urgent need of chronic conditions today. So here's what his bio actually says, and I'm going to add him a little bit. So Dr. Todd Watts is a national board-certified chiropractic physician in Idaho, a functional wellness practitioner. Many know him as the Parasite Guy, which is true, but he also has extensive knowledge in functional blood chemistry, biochemistry, and in helping those with chronic illness overcome their struggles to restore their health. He's also the co-founder of CellCore Biosciences, and loves to research to formulate products and which will change the world. Dr. Watts was the first to bring Mimosa Pudica seed to the general health market in the United States. And he has an amazing health journey, which has also led him to be able to help others. And I would actually go further and say Dr. Todd Watts has really been foundational in starting a movement of people taking back control over their health, even in today's complex day and age, and all the factors at play with that. So I'm so thrilled to be able to share his wisdom with you today. Thanks and welcome, Dr. Todd.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, so sorry to embarrass you, but you're kind of a big deal. And let's unpack for people. I really wanted you to be at the beginning of the summit here with me, helping people to understand what paradigm we're in, because there's a lot of different ways to view health and medical issues today. And I want to help people ground into what the solutions that are available to us that we see really working, and you have been instrumental in sharing those with people. Let's start out and let's do sort of rapid fire presuppositions, building the framework for people. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so how would you describe the difference between germ theory versus terrain theory? We often refer to terrain theory as we're trying to describe the solutions, but if you don't know what it is, it's not very meaningful, right?
Right. So what most people are familiar with is germ theory. And germ theory is where we talk about the bugs are bad, so we got to kill the bugs. Hence, we have antibiotics, antifungals, everything's there we're getting infected and then we're trying to kill it and get it out of the body.
Yeah.
Terrain theory is the fact that the bugs are there for a purpose. It's the terrain that's changed and therefore causing pleomorphism, meaning that the bacteria is already there. We already have E. coli in our body. We already have Candida in our body. And as we reintroduce these toxins into our body, all of a sudden now these things can pleomorph and be toxic to us, meaning that their byproduct is toxic, but the bug itself is not necessarily toxic. And so therefore, what we're missing out is we need to clean up the terrain versus always going after the bug. Bugs play a role. And in fact, part of detoxifying, what's really happening is the bug is metabolizing the toxin. And that's why it raises it. That's why we get all this candida in our body. That's why we get other bacteria that increases, say, H. pylori and a variety of other bugs there. And it could be even to the point of, there's some theories, maybe Lyme disease, maybe Lyme, right, has a role of detoxing the body, that we got exposed to something and now it's active and it's going. And we're always trying to go in there and kill, through IV antibiotics, through herbals, through whatever it may be, versus looking at it from an immune standpoint, detoxing what's creating the problem, and then looking at, okay, how do I balance the immune system out to make the body work on its own the way it should?
Yeah, that's a great way to summarize it. So what do you see as some of the biggest toxic drivers that are really clogging up this terrain in our body today?
So there's a couple of the largest exposures we have are, one is glyphosate, right? And then another one's atrazine. And atrazine is the second most used pesticide. And that is also highly responsible for a lot of hormonal dysfunction within the body. That's where A doctor wrote a book on estrogenation. It's the estrogenation in a way of men, right? Lower testosterone, more estrogen, and creating all kinds of health issues, developmental issues as well.
Yeah, really well said. And so I think that people are still focusing a lot on heavy metals and they are absolutely disruptive to the terrain. And at the same time, we need to really
Sure.
expand our awareness and our intelligence about these chemical exposures and how quickly we normalize them, right?
Well, there's over 86,000 chemicals registered with the EPA. Probably 40 or so that are active chemicals being used, but then you have all these other ones that are forever chemicals, the PFAS, et cetera. Those, when you really look at those, they're in our environment, they're everywhere. So are we worried about a little bit of heavy metals that we have exposure to that we're blaming the problem for, or is it the 86,000 plus chemicals that have been used for years that have increased? And when you look at the health trends, colitis, Crohn's disease, autoimmune disease, a lot of these illnesses have really skyrocketed in the 90s on up through the 2000s, right along with the usage of glyphosate, for example. And then
Yeah.
you have these other chemicals. And so can we blame everything on the trend in functional medicine? We get these trends. Oh, it's candida. That's the problem. It's heavy metals. It's mercury. The problem, and they're ignoring what we're most exposed to in our food, air, and water.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Okay, so in terrain theory, given that our body burden of environmental toxicants is going up dramatically over the last couple of decades, what is the relationship between that and that bacterial response that you alluded to? If bacteria are not the enemy, what are they doing and why have they become so quote unquote problematic?
So they're problematic because of their byproduct they produce, kind of like the bug poop, right? it we react to that, it creates a lot of problems. So in Lyme, an example of Lyme is that then it creates joint pain. It creates, and it's not the Lyme that's creating it. It's the byproduct, the ammonia, and the other byproduct, the toxin they produce. Parasites produce a lot of toxins that those biotoxins that then also create joint pain, that create a lot of gastrointestinal problems, a lot of dysregulation within the immune system. And so you consider, okay, the whole role of bacteria, part of it is cleaning up the environment. There's an experiment done that I know the company that they had this big old latrine, dairy latrine, where it's just nasty, gross, disgusting. It's like, okay, how do we clean this up? So they fed it nutrients, the bacteria that like put a bunch of nutrients in it that fed good aerobic bacteria that really they clean the lake up.
Mhm.
So they weren't going in and trying to kill off all that bacteria and the garbage stuff. Instead, they fed the good bacteria, metabolized the toxins, and cleaned everything up and created the right microbiome or the right terrain in that area.
That's a perfect example. Okay, so you're the parasite guy,
Mhm.
and you really helped people to understand just how widespread gut parasites are and how persistent they are. You know, setting aside for the moment, other systemic parasites. How does all of that fit into the gut microbiome issues that we're seeing today, pleomorphism? Do you think that, how can you explain to people who are just getting exposed to the idea of parasites driving some of their deep gut issues, how all this fits together?
Well, as parasites proliferate, when there's a bad terrain, then the immune system is affected, which
Hmm.
then allows the parasites to then proliferate, create an environment where biofilms are built. You have a lot more yeast, fungus that is in that arena, and more bacteria. So with that, they thrive. They absorb actually a lot of toxins, which is beneficial in some ways. I presented on this, but at the same time, when you consider what's really happening there is they're producing their own toxin, biotoxin that causes damage to the lining of the intestines, that causes damage to the function of how the body works. Some of them produce enzymes that inhibit peristalsis to where you get constipated. Other ones cause diarrhea in the system. And then other ones produce enzymes that inhibit Krebs cycle function, which then can create fatigue and lack of production of ATP, which is the fuel for lots of enzymatic reactions within the body and how it all works. So when you look at overall what it does, yeah, it creates all kinds of issues. I remember one of the problems I had when I first started detoxing, I created a product called Para2, and I worked on it for 2.5 years. And I made a formula with a combination, a variety of ingredients. And wasn't quite there yet. I had this one other thing. So I finally added one other ingredient called holy basil. And all of a sudden, literally, I've been taking the product before the holy basil in it, been taking it for a couple months. I'm using 2 dropperfuls and I do 2 doses. All of a sudden, my hands are swollen, my feet are swollen. I got rash all over my body. I'm like, what's going on? And I thought like my wife changed laundry. So, is it something that happened? And then I realized, oh, it's the product. And I just had, obviously, I still had remnants of Lyme and other things in my joints that needed to be cleaned out. A body that needed further detox. And as I did that, I backed off for a few days and then started back on at lower dosing, worked up to where I was doing 5 to 10 dropperfuls. And it just changed so much in my health by being able to clear out deeper detoxification. And so when you look at some of these herbs, not only do they have maybe some antimicrobial effects, but they really work well with the microbiome on helping to balance that and can have anti-inflammatory properties and a lot of other health properties versus just killing stuff. Like neem is one is called the village pharmacy, and it really helps actually make a better microbiome. And they say you pass parasites because it's a bitter, so that it pushes stuff out.
Yeah, that's a great overview for people. So you mentioned your own product development. Of course, that's for CellCore. And I just want to give people a little bit of a window into your personal health story and how you're coming at this, not just as a clinician and as a formulator, but also as somebody who has walked this path of being chronically ill and having to figure out these issues for yourself. Can you
Yeah.
share your story a little bit with us?
Yeah. So I'll be 55 here in September, and at 28 I hit wall with Lyme with Epstein Barr. So I went through that whole thing, was down for a couple months, and then got slowly back to work and getting my health back. But after that, at 30, I started developing allergies and just injuries were occurring, pulling hamstrings, muscles, tendonitis, Achilles tendonitis, really bad. Wrist pain. I had wrist pain probably back of my wrist for 20 years. I couldn't figure out what that was. I had a little stitch underneath my left rib, so this little pain that ever so often bothered me. And then when I hit 40, I went through a lot of stress. And in 2008, there's a lot that happened in the economy. I lost my houses, my cars, everything. And I had a couple of girls that went back to school at age 41. And at that point, when I was in school, I was at a conference and I was listening to this doctor talk about Lyme disease, never heard of it.
Mhm.
And he listed all these symptoms. I'm thinking, man, fatigue, headaches, migraines, food sensitivities, seasonal allergies, joint pain, memory issues, word recall. I can't work out. My legs seem really heavy. Just some stuff with my heart. It's like, okay, what is all this? Lyme and babesia were two main issues. And, I went down that road of like, okay, taking products for that stuff, help for a while, and then I would crash, help for a while, and I crash. And I wasn't looking at the whole system, right? I was
Mm,
looking at the infection. And as I was going through my journey as a doctor, I graduated and, another guy told me about parasites. Like, oh, yeah, this parasite. So I went this rabbit hole, deep dive. Once I treated parasites, all of a sudden my whole immune system balanced out and I started cycling back on these Lyme disease issues. And because the Th1, Th2 immune systems are highly correlated and one suppresses the other if it's out of balance. And the main issue I had was the parasite infections creating the suppression in the immune system allowing the issues to occur. And then from there, I learned more about detoxification and understanding toxins. And as I cleared out toxins, then a lot of my symptoms with the fatigue went away. My allergies went away, clearing parasites, my joint pain, my wrist pain. That was crazy. My wrist pain that I had all those years gone. So just my headaches, migraines, all that went away. But my fatigue really went away once I addressed some of the toxin. And parasites also really helped.
What I love about your story is that I think it gives people a lot of hope for one thing and also describes the progression that so many people have to make. There are these early warning signs for years. And then when life hands you a really stressful event that exceeds your nervous system's capacity to meet it, that's when everything comes crashing in. That's when the toxin bucket feels like it's overflowing, even though it's been building for quite some time.
Decades.
Yes, exactly. So, because you have such a breadth of expertise in gut health, in persistent chronic gut conditions, and in parasites specifically, I really want to give us some time to unpack some of the myths that still persist, even in functional medicine, even in natural health, about parasites, about chronic gut conditions, because I think we're still catching up to the data that's available to us now. What do you think some of
Absolutely.
those top myths are?
Yeah, I agree with that. One is that, they believe in testing, and parasites rarely test I mean, they do come positive sometimes, but, I've had so many negative tests that I saw then just treated, it was like, okay, well, we have no thing. I really believe this is the problem. We need to treat that, and sure, just stuff comes out like you can't believe. I've seen just mother loads of liver flukes come out of people, tapeworms come out of people, roundworms, just people. I've had women urinate out parasites.
Yeah.
People blow up parasites. Parasites come out through their sinuses and their nose, some out their ears. That's rare, but couple of those through their skin. I mean, you see them, and their life and health changes dramatically because going that avenue of like, and I would have never gone down that road in functional medicine had I relied on a lab to find.
So true. I think it's heartbreaking actually, the level of accuracy in those stool tests that are claiming, essentially that if we can't see it in there, then it must not be there because you can waste years of health on essentially an incomplete window of information.
Well, what people do is they take nutrients and vitamins and vitamin C and vitamin D, and they do IVs and they do all these other things. And what they're missing out is the root cause of why they're not getting down to the foundation of what's really happening.
Yeah.
And if you look at other countries, so as you go out and study outside the United States, this is just common. Parasite cleansing is really common.
Yeah.
But we're a global economy now. Just because we live in the United States doesn't mean we're not affected by these things. You can get them through mosquito bites, you can get them through food, you can get them through water sources, swimming in a lake, walking barefoot, from your dogs and cats and horses and animals and things
How
that we
they bond to each other.
each other. It's just how it is. And so if we just are more consistent with doing that, you're going to have better health and longer longevity.
So what do you think are some of the top mistakes that people make when it comes to parasite cleansing? Because not all parasite cleanses are created equal, right?
No, they're not for sure. So many times I've had people take all kinds of different products, which is why I formulated a bunch of new ones because I never saw the results. And so when you're looking at it, one is you got to be sure you're taking products that address the eggs, address the different forms of the parasites. Otherwise, you just keep reinfecting and they just keep producing. So that's where 3 of the 4 products of the pairs have ingredients that address the eggs, para 2, 3, and 4. And then the Mimosa Pudica product's done a great job just scrubbing the gut, removing a lot of things that just don't belong there. And we've seen that over and over with people when it's, some people are like, oh, it's just the product that you see. And it's not just the product. As a clinician, who's worked with the product for probably 8 years now. Yeah, maybe 9 years now. And then other clinicians, you can tell what's the product, what's not the product. And also you get to look at clinically, how are their, how are their symptoms? Are they going away? Are the people improving? Um, it's awesome to see people's lives change from that standpoint.
I
And,
know.
and they're all created equal. And even the medications actually can be helpful, but they don't address the stages of the parasites. They don't address the eggs and stuff that they need. So some of them are more just gut, other ones go systemic. And so I find really diving in, working more with nature has really helped and really getting good results.
We get people in our rapid gut reset course who go from not believing that they disbelieve that they have parasites and like, I'm here, but I'm here to learn the other tools in the course. I'm sure I don't have parasites. And then we have them do the Para One challenge with the Mimosa Pudica seed. And They go from not believing that this is a core issue to them to like in 6 weeks, they can tell already they're so body literate so quickly. I can tell when I'm about to pass a large parasite because I have these internal signals. And then this is how I feel afterwards. And it's
Hmm.
immediate relief. They feel more like themselves again. There are significant shifts in your health often right away. And
Absolutely.
it's just astonishing.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing. It's amazing how many of the symptoms go away. I mean, seasonal allergies were horrible. I had them really bad, and my eyes itch so bad, and I get my throat itching, the nasal congestion, the ear itching. Just the quality of life changes. The headaches, the migraines. That was wonderful to be able to not have that and be able to eat different foods without having reactions to the foods as well. And, to get rid of the different pains and issues within the body that can all occur from parasites.
yeah, it's actually wild. So we are going to unpack this further in the summit with Dr. David Moore and so many other friends. But I really want to fill in any gaps right now to set the stage for everybody so that we can have a really successful educational experience here. People really can take control over their own health in a short amount of time. So when it comes to terrain theory, how toxins build up, how they necessitate almost that pathogenic response, bacteria pleomorphing into their aggressive form to help stabilize the situation or take advantage of it, depending on how you look at it.
Hmm.
Or it's parasites thriving in this stagnant environment. What else do people need to know about this picture in order to figure out like what's really going to move the needle for them?
So a couple different things. One is being sure your drainage pathways are moving. You're having good bowel movements. Your bowel is flowing really well. You're able to get the toxicants out of the body. Another thing to consider is as you parasite cleanse, it's really important to cleanse and clear toxins and toxicants. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, then you can, feel some of the repercussions from that, headaches, rashes, and things. So opening up drainage is really important. Using the binders to really help to soak up and clean up, sponge all the toxins and stuff. And then, using the process. There's a process to this. Supporting energy, mitochondrial function, so you're restoring the body's immune system to function the way it needs to is really important. The optimal thing is for me, I look at is how do I get the body to do what it's supposed to do and that God made it to do on its own. It's overburdened right now. So let me remove the burden and then allow it to do what it naturally knows how to do.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Thank you so much. How about for folks who think that they're already doing drainage support? And then, like, Dr. Todd, I've been working on this stuff and I still feel a little lost, or I'm not seeing the results that I was hoping for. What are some common things that people skip or overlook?
Well, if they're doing drainage support, great. So that's awesome. That means you're supporting kidney, liver, and bowel movements. So but those organs need to be really supported well. The next thing to consider and look at is going to be to really look at how do I get to that optimal health? Balancing the immune system out really is important to consider.
Mhm.
What fights bacteria, protozoans, viruses, and stuff is going to be from the Th1 immune system. Parasites is Th2. And if it's imbalanced, then the body's not going to be able to handle it. So you may need to give it additional support to deal with those things, to reduce some of those symptoms. And then from there, you know what I found mindset and how you think is so important. You are what you think. The physiology occurs. Walking, getting out in the sun is really important. There's red light therapy, sauna therapy. There's the cold plunge therapy stuff. Working in some of these things into your daily routine. Enemas have really been helpful to really open up that liver and move things. Colonics for some people. So, bringing some of these different treatments that you may not normally do or are accustomed to doing
Mm.
actually can be some big breakthroughs for you.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I really appreciate you pointing that out. Any last words of encouragement for our gluten-free yogis who still feel like crap? They think they're doing everything right and they still have a long way to go.
If you're feeling like crap, then you haven't got to the source of the problem. So you still have to work on why it's there. There's a reason. The toxin you're missing, there's an infection you're missing, or a parasite that you need to clear, and that will get you to that next level. This is a journey. It's not an event. Detoxification is not an event. It's a journey. It's a lifelong thing. You will get exposed every day, especially if you live in Southern California, where I'm from originally. But it's in the air. I mean, look at the air; it looks horrible. The
Yeah.
water supply has a ton of toxins. That's why clean water is so important in the food. And organic, eating locally grown, people you know, supporting local businesses is really important anyway. It supports your community. And I'm a big advocate of that. And especially meat if you buy from the store, the reason why it's red is because it's sprayed with ammonium chloride and it's sprayed with other chemicals to keep it looking fresh. Where you go buy, like, I have a sister in law that raises cattle. So we get a half a cow every year. And once or twice a year, it's all frozen. It's not going through a process of getting toxins added to it. Also, then is it free range versus eating up the garbage and the toxic food that they're feeding that has all the GMO stuff in it. So knowing what you're eating, what you're putting into your body, what you're putting into your mind, your brain is really important, and it can be a game changer. Your mindset, that really helped me overcome my health, is changing the way I thought and knowing that I was a warrior to overcome all this chronic 10 years of fatigue and health issues to get me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. I didn't realize that back when I was so sick and you know, couldn't read an email, couldn't write a sentence, couldn't stand up for more than 5 minutes at a time. I had this negative meditation going the whole day long. My body is broken. I'm on the short bus. My genes are messed up. Why me? Why me? And my body was listening the whole time.
It does.
You
It's amazing.
Funny how that works. And it was really making that decision to ask myself instead, just even a neutral question: is the thought I'm thinking right now adding to my life force or is it decreasing it? And the answer is always going to be clear when your body knows the truth.
It does. That's great. It's clear.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story and the gifts that came out of your own health journey. I would argue that it's worth it because so many of us, including myself, have benefited from your deep research and your commitment to excellence. So I really appreciate your contribution.
You're welcome. Love to be a part of this. And it's what I have a passion for, is helping others. Love it.
Thank you for tuning in to Dr. Talks. We hope today's episode has enlightened and inspired you on your path to optimal health. Each day is a new opportunity to make choices that empower your well-being. For more insights and strategies, subscribe to our podcast and visit our website, www.drtalks.com. Stay connected, stay healthy, and join us next time on Dr. Talks. Real talks from real doctors on the issues that matter to you most.